Hello and welcome to HT's weekly talk show, The Interview, and our special segment on civil services. The smell of coconut oil tormented him, something he has not settled to till date. The youngest in the IPS to serve as Commissioner of Police, he quit the service to branch out on his own and tried his hand at several things, be it concept owl or habit strong. We meet Rajan Singh and trace his remarkable journey from the uniform to chiseling young minds in this edition of HD's weekly talk show, The Interview, in our special segment on civil services. Welcome to the show, Mr. Rajan Singh, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Nice to be here, Kumkum.
Let me take you back to your days in the Indian Police Service. And let me ask you, why did you discard the cop's uniform? In other words, were you disenchanted?
Okay, I wasn't disenchanted. I joined the service with the looking at the career opportunities. It was the professional growth and the overall experience. I was expecting it to be challenging, which it was. But what I found was that after the first 5 years were actually quite exciting. Everything was new. Gradually, as I went through the day-to-day job, I found that things started becoming repetitive, and I was still like barely 30, and I had another 30 odd years of service left. And that's when I had to ask the question, like, do I want to keep doing something which is probably not exciting me as much? So it was essentially more, I would say, mostly about the intellectual challenge and the excitement than anything else. So that is the reason why I left the service.
You loved Kerala, where you served as the youngest police commissioner, but you hated coconut oil. Given your sense of adventure, do I take it that coconut oil was one of the reasons why you quit or decided to leave?
A wonderful question. No, I do not, of course, I do not like coconut oil. The taste of it is, I found it very hard to acclimatize to, but nevertheless, no. So it wasn't the reason. And like you said, Kumkum, I love Kerala and I'm here out of choice now. So no, it wasn't the coconut, but I would still prefer food cooked in any other medium.
But it is true that you did find your work creating more dread than joy, to quote you.
Kumkum, what happens is, these jobs are, especially civil services, especially Indian police service, it's a very multifaceted, very complex job. So it's very hard to give a single characterization to it. There are aspects of the job which are nuanced. There are aspects which are difficult. There are aspects which are delightful. So it's a sort of rainbow. It's a mix of a lot of different things. So I would say any single characterization would not do justice to the job. There were things that I would that would not appeal to me 100%. Um, so, as an example, it's a very hierarchical service. The usual response to everything is like yes, sir, yes, ma'am. So um, that takes away sometimes the sense of uh, creativity, the sense that okay, you have the freedom to say or do the right thing. And sometimes the situations can be challenging, bosses can be difficult. So it is certainly not an easy job. I would say it's one of the very hard jobs out there, but I would say it can also have very wonderful moments. So it's a mixed bag, to be honest.
Let me take you down memory lane and let me ask you to recount some of the wonderful moments and some incidents which you would like to forget.
There was a case where somebody from the ruling party was harassing a family, and in fact, the daughter committed suicide. It's a very, very tragic case. And These guys, they kept relentlessly like harassing her and the mother as well. And that case came to my notice, and we were able to take some action even though the ruling party was involved. There were examples when you're facing a very difficult situation, violent situation, mob violence, rioting, and you handle it without too much of damage. Nobody gets killed, um, and those are situations where it could have gone anyway. So I would say those situations where you feel like professionally you did your best, minimized loss of life or property, and hopefully were able to bring some happiness, some joy to their lives, solve difficult problems. Kumkum, what happens is these jobs are uh, they have in some sense not changed for decades, sometimes even centuries, certain aspects of it. So like when I joined the police service, the the mechanism to monitor the habitual criminals, it was still like 100 years old. So we were able to start a new computer system and actually create a mechanism to use technology to track people who have committed serious offenses. Again, these are minor things, but I think those are the things that gave me the most satisfaction. In terms of forgettable events, I guess it's very hard to recount specifically. But okay, one thing I would say is sometimes it felt like a very thankless job, maybe more than sometimes. So there were situations where you work very hard, you try to prevent certain bad outcome, and after that, like maybe you talk to your boss or talk to somebody, and there is it has happened only a few times, but you'll see like there is absolutely no appreciation, no acknowledgement, not your work, not the work done by your subordinates, and the people with you, your team is like working really hard, like some of them are working till late in the night, like the whole 24 hours, and somebody will still stand and criticize that. That also has happened. So I would say that would be my forgettable moment.
You have jumped, and I'm using the word jumped, from one discipline to another: police, consultant, investment professional, and now heading your own setup. What does it say about you? Your critics perhaps would say he is not able to make up his mind.
I would say the critics are probably right. I think what it says, I hope what it says is that it says two things. I hope. One is that when something doesn't make sense, I try not to let the burden of past determine your future course of action or future life. It takes some amount of, I would say, courage, some amount of risk taking to say, okay, you know what, I have built this, but I'm willing to leave the ship and do something from start and take my chances, and it may or may not work out. Be willing to start again if you have to. Very often what happens is when we think of restarting, fear comes in. What if it doesn't work out? How will I catch up? How will I, maybe people in that field are already ahead of me, maybe there's a big learning curve. And not letting fear come in the way, be willing to learn those things and restart. Right? Restart your life as many times as it takes. And I hope that those are things that I have displayed in these decisions. But then, if my critics say that I couldn't make up my mind, maybe that also is not totally wrong.
You started Concept Owl, and after that, followed with Habit Strong. Tell me about both these ventures.
Conceptual was a learning company, and mm, it originated from my love for science. I wanted to bring quality science and math rigorous learning to small towns. And the big challenge, Kumkum, in that area was that the way the way our learning systems, or I would say the way education works, is it is very teacher dependent. So the question in my mind was, can we do something which helps sort of disconnect the quality of experience from the quality of teacher. It's a very tough problem, and that's what we tried. I would say we met partial success. There were some formats we tried to experiment which were not successful, and then while we were trying all this, COVID happened, and our business model became unviable after the lockdown. And then I was thinking of, okay, what do I do next? What is it that excites me? And then I figured that let me do something which is hard and and do something which resonates with me personally. And what I found was that in my own life, I have benefited immensely from building good habits, having a morning routine, waking up on time, sleeping on time, building focus. So these are things I believe which make for a meaningful, rich life. And that's how I started Habit Strong, to just help people build these habits and inculcate them into their day-to-day life.
You know, you have often said that one must get out of bad habits, and you have a formula for breaking out of bad habits. Just take me through that. And what is your success quotient, and how does it work?
Just to clarify, Kumkum, there is no formula for bad habit, but there are structured approaches or structured ways to break any bad habit. Essentially, habit is an automatic action that we take um, in response to some external trigger. So let's say I'm working in my office and I'm getting bored, and I check my phone, check Instagram, and then I see something interesting and feel a little bit good. Then I get back to work again, I get bored, and again I repeat. Now, what happens is whenever you check your Instagram in the middle of your work, in this example I gave, it gives you a certain sense of like a little bit of pleasure, a little bit of like it feels a little better. And in your brain, the dopamine level, dopamine is a neurotransmitter which is meant to, which is designed to help you learn faster. So what happens is every time, think of it this way. So you get bored, you check Instagram, feel good, get bored. So you the sequence keeps repeating, and then your brain says, you know what, this is a very predictable sequence. So why not just make it automatic? So it becomes efficient. So our brain is trying to optimize and make everything efficient. So this becomes an automatic script. So initially you're checking Instagram as a conscious as a conscious activity, but once you've done it a couple of hundred times, you do it unthinkingly because you're in your brain that script is running, and that is habit. So now the question is, how do you break that script? So first there's the triggers, which means you're getting bored. So if let's say you were not getting bored, then there'll be no habit. But that's not possible in many cases, because you're going to get bored some days in any case. So if but there are situations where you can remove the trigger. So if you can remove the trigger, that's fantastic. If you cannot remove the trigger, when the trigger hits you, when you're getting bored, you have this urge to check the phone. Now there are many ways in which you can handle your urge. Any craving that we have, craving any kind of, I would say broadly, any emotion, it's a temporary transient thing. So it comes and then it goes. And the best way to handle any emotion or any craving is to observe it mindfully in your body. Observe what it feels like, and if you observe for a minute or two, that craving will dissolve. And it's a very simple but a very, very, very powerful way to let go of that craving, be it to check Instagram, be it to smoke, be it to have alcohol, whatever it is. Let's say your habit is, somebody has a habit of smoking. So you feel anxious, go out and just pull out a cigarette and smoke. Replace that. So don't try to stop it necessarily by force, replace it with something else. So maybe like have a healthy snack. When you feel anxious, just go and have that snack. Or maybe just have a glass of water, or just go for a walk around the office. So this is, in fact, this technique, as simple as it sounds, it's used in treating addiction. So the whole habit loop is the same, but you replace one action with another action. It's called substitution.
Tell us a little more about breaking away from the bad habit of alcohol, or maybe
Um,
something worse, drugs.
what happens in alcohol, especially alcohol, and I would say marijuana, a lot of drug addictions, is the dependence is very chemical. So when you have the trigger, let's take alcohol as an example. Some people the may have this habit of drinking whenever they meet some friends in a pub or in a bar in the evening. So now the social circle, just being around these 4 or 5 people in that location, that's your trigger. So you may go there thinking, okay, today I'm not going to drink, but you land there and now these guys are drinking, and automatically now your mind says, okay, let's have a drink. So changing that trigger can actually help. Now again, it depends upon the degree. If the addiction is very, very strong, uh, then then these things may not work completely. But in moderate addiction, this can be a very effective thing. Second thing you talked about, specifically with regard to alcohol, drugs, etc. Because in your these things, they do a lot of damage to our brain. So if somebody is taking cocaine as an example, cocaine destroys certain dopamine receptors. Uh, In addition to that, there'll be certain chemical changes. So in those cases, you have to, in many cases, people have to be given some other drugs to help them overcome those specific situations. The structure of alcohol addiction, cocaine addiction, and Instagram addiction, structurally it is very similar, but the degree of addiction can be much stronger, and there can be this chemical dependence, and therefore it looks like a different thing, but conceptually it is the same process. It's not very different.
You have said, if I'm not mistaken, that we change lives. Isn't that rather a tall claim to make?
Life changing is not like, okay, I'm transported to London or New York and I'm like living a different life. No, life changing is i feel I feel more focused, I feel less stressed, I feel more joyful, I'm less distracted, and that is what we intend to do. So if you take that as a definition of life change, then I think what we do is exactly what we promise people.
Let me take you back to your days of growing up. And as every young adult, there must have been bad habits which you had. What were those and how did you shed them? And they are not with you any longer.
Okay, so one bad habit which I had for a like very very long time was, throughout my school and even in college in IIT, I don't think I rarely went to class on time. Showing up on time was not my thing. What fixed this? This was not my doing. I think it happened externally. But when I joined the Indian Police Service, in the training, Kumkum, the way it works in all these uniformed forces is like if you have a parade, everything is done T minus 20. So let's say if you have to be at a particular place at 6 o'clock, you never go at 6 o'clock. You always go at 5:40. Essentially, they teach you that, okay, build buffer and take no chances. Like remove this thing of chance, build certainty by building a buffer. And after after IPS, I think I learned how to be on time, which is not to be on time, be before time.
Can I take it that everyone in your family, including the younger people, have only good habits?
Of course not. I think the important thing is to keep striving to move in a direction which is aligned with your life goals. Everybody is imperfect, but in that imperfection, we can still build great qualities, we can build character, we can build strength, we can learn stuff. So don't stop pursuing good goals because you're not perfect, because nobody is.
Which is that one bad habit of yours which you are trying or have been trying to give up but have failed miserably?
Very interesting question. I think one thing which I'm trying, and I have been trying for a long time, is not becoming, not being anxious about what's coming up next, and being present in the moment. But in the process of pursuing our goals, which of course is the rightful thing to do, we forget that right now, in the present moment, we have something meaningful going on, and we forget to experience ourselves. That is something which I'm trying. I've made some progress, but I wouldn't say a lot of progress. So still, like, even though I keep telling myself, I still forget that, oh, you know what, live right now. When your mind goes somewhere, bring it back.
Let me quote you. I had a golden cushion to fall back on, but I didn't want to turn these into handcuffs. Just explain this to me.
What I observe, Kumkum, is that when people go to good colleges, good business schools, naturally they can find really great jobs and they can get good salaries and everything looks great. But what it also does is it increases the opportunity cost. So if you had to leave something that you're doing, the fear of letting go of what you already have, even if you don't value it, that fear becomes overpowering. And when that happens, then your pedigree, your resume, your experience, everything, it becomes a handcuff. So just to give an example, let's say somebody's working in a investment bank, and I know this is I know this from a couple of my friends. So they would be working in these jobs which they don't really like, but the salary is so good, the bonuses are so high, that every year they think, oh, you know what, I will quit next year. But next year, what happens? The salary is even higher, the bonuses are even bigger. And now you have to wait one more year. And now you are in that trap. Now you have the golden handcuff because that's not very, it's not that the job is bad. Absolutely, that's not the case. But that is not where you want to be. And yet you cannot leave, which means you are tied up. And that is what a handcuff does. It ties you up.
What were the real challenges after leaving service, apart from, of course, giving up the luxurious apartment?
I was in the Kerala Carter where we had a good apartment, but it wasn't luxurious by any stretch. But nevertheless, I think it's a valid question. There are different types of challenges. Um, some challenges I did not face because when I left IPS, I had admission to Wharton's MBA program, which is one of the world's top business schools. So it wasn't like I had left my job and I did not know what to do. So in some sense, there was a clear roadmap to follow, but certainly it was hard to go from a point where I was running a police force of a state capital, had thousands of people working under me, to a point where you're back to a student again. You have to write exams, you have to look for a job, go and look for internships, and start your career all over again. So I think the challenge was to give up on everything that you have spent, maybe almost like I had spent 8 years building something, give it up and restart in a totally new area from zero. It certainly felt weird, and and just acclimatizing, getting used to the idea that okay, you know what, you could have, in some ways I'm behind the curve, 10 year, maybe a decade behind the curve, but also in some ways you have learned other things, you have had experiences which you may not have had otherwise. So I think it was a sort of decent trade-off, but adjusting, acclimatizing to those situations, to restarting a career, being a fresher again, being a beginner again, that was hard.
Do you miss the cop's uniform?
No, no, of course not. I don't miss it. It was good while it lasted, but I absolutely do not miss it.
And finally, given that you have quit the service, what would your advice be to aspirants that this is not the place to be in?
I would say be clear about what you want, and what you're going there for. So you have to be willing to reconcile to what the job offers, which is not salary, which is not those kind of comforts, but there are other things that it does offer. So have clarity about your goals. I would say if you join the services, be clear about what you want and be realistic. Civil services are great career options. They give you phenomenal experience of a certain kind, but there are also many, many other opportunities out there. So don't close your eyes to them. If it's not working out, there is no shame in it. Move on. There are phenomenal things out there. Go and explore the world.
On that note, Mr. Rajan Singh, thank you very much. Thank you for your time and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Kumkum.